Welcome to NuunessTV, a web series where leading ladies in athletic performance discuss the truths, challenges, and opportunities in being an active woman participant in sport. I'm Alicia Montano, Olympic athlete, 7-time USA track and field champion, and mother, and I'm happy to be your host for NuunessTV. Meet Haley Daniels. Haley is a Canadian canoeist representing Team Canada in her pursuit of competing as a female canoeist in the Olympics. Haley has worked tirelessly over the last 10 years as an activist for equal representation of female paddle athletes. The inclusion of women's canoeing in the Tokyo 2021 Olympic Games is a direct result of Haley and her peers' determination and perseverance.
Haley, thank you so much for joining us on NuunessTV. Before we get started, I wanted to have you actually jump in and tell us a little bit about you, how you developed a love for canoeing, and just the journey that it's been for you thus far.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. But canoeing's been something that's been a part of my life, my whole life. So my parents are avid outdoor people, and we grew up just going out on weekends and fishing in lakes and going down on river trips in big prospector canoes with like dry bags and going down for a couple days, just connected with the water and nature. And I think for me, what really got me into paddling was just being able to do something different. I really liked that it wasn't like soccer or volleyball, but it was also something that allowed me to get to the mountains and like open, wide spaces that were outside of the city.
So like something that you could just do with your family and just be fresh and free. I think that's so incredible. And in that journey, you talk about it seeming to be so fluid, but were there any major milestones in just what has paved your path to continuing its pursuit, and then just also where it took you into the professional aspect of things?
Well, there's always some hiccups. There's always some things that are setbacks. I think that as a young girl, I was always very energetic. And so for me, moving was something that was actually both my advantage and my disadvantage. So I had a lot of trouble sitting in school and sitting still, and I always wanted to be social. So that's where sport, and specifically whitewater canoeing, is what allowed me to be that creative outlet and move and share and be with others. So that was kind of my first hurdle, is figuring out how I could channel that energy. And then as I progressed, I wish I could say that I was a young girl who was like, 3 years old, I wanted to go to the Olympics, but that was totally not my path. I would say for me, it was just a natural progression of I just followed my passion. So my parents continued to take me to the river to different competitions or different training sessions, and I kept on showing up and not hating it, kept on loving it.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. And so the more and more I got into it, I actually started as a kayaker. So you're sitting on your bum and you have 2 blades, but the boat looks very similar. And as I started as a kayaker, I was going to different competitions, and I made the junior national team when I was younger, and we got to go to Europe, which was super cool, and go compete at junior world championships in Czech Republic. And then we went to a couple of smaller races in Germany and Austria. And my eyes were completely opened. I was like, whoa, okay. First off, I have a lot of work to do because the Europeans are a lot better at integrating paddling at a younger age. So I was like, okay, like I really need to put some work in to get there. But it also opened my eyes that there was this whole world of paddling and where I could go from there. And it instead of it being like, okay, I'm just doing this sport, it was like, this is where I want to be. These are the people I want to be around. And that's really what it did for me. So from there, I continued to kayak, and then there was an opportunity for women's canoeing to also do that sport. So it had opened up in the World Championships, and years, I can't specifically remember, but I was about 14 or 15 years old when this happened. I'm 29 now, to give you perspective. So my dad and I had this conversation of, okay, I think you should start doing women's canoe. So I bought a C1, we call them, or a canoe, and I was doing kayak and canoe at the same time. And I was really, really afraid of C1. I was really, really afraid of canoeing, because in canoeing, you're kneeling, you're strapped in, and you have one blade. So everywhere that you could get in a kayak with two blades while sitting, it was a little bit harder because you only had one blade and your center of gravity was higher. So I was always afraid. So I was always like, oh, I'll kayak today and I'll canoe tomorrow. And there was this point where my dad is my confidant. So we can get into that after, but she now is always someone that I have talked to and confided in, and we always make really big decisions together. Same with my mom, but I don't know. It's just my dad and I, we always jive, we see eye to eye. So we were like, okay, I think that you should put the kayak away and focus on C1. And we saw this opportunity that it was potentially going to be in the Olympics, and we thought it was going to be soon. So from that point, I hung up my kayak paddle and I got into a C1, and the rest is history. And I guess we can get into all different aspects of it, but it became so much bigger than following my passion of paddling, and soon turning into advocacy and paving a pathway for future women and women's canoeists to come. So
yes, I wanted to just dig into that really quick. Let's just jump right into that. You know, you are doing this water sport that you love so much with your family, and then you're pursuing it at a professional level and recognizing, you know, that there wasn't a space for you. What was your initial reaction? You know, even learning at 14 that this isn't something that women were able to do going into world championships. I mean, you know, was that something that surprised you? What was that reaction there?
Yeah, I think when I first initially got into canoeing and found out that it wasn't an Olympic sport, I don't think I was frustrated or angry, because there was a promise that it would be. And so we were just working hard, training hard to be good at our sport, and we knew that at some point soon we would be in the Olympics. But yeah, as we got farther and farther, so this was before the London Olympics, it didn't get added into the program in London. And so that's when all of the women's canoeists across the world were like, okay, like, this is no longer a waiting game or saving face, like, this needs to change. So that's when all of us came together and started advocating for gender equality in the Olympics.
Did they have a reasoning as to why women's canoeing was not a part of the Olympics and why it took so long?
There's a lot of bureaucracy in this part. That's what sport is. But there was a lot of different reasons that they would give throughout the timeline. So initially they had said that there was not enough women competing across the world for us to be in the world, at the Olympics. But statistically, that was actually untrue. But that was a reason they were using. And then they were saying, oh, you're not ready. Like, so they were saying girls are still swimming, or that they're not. I know, right? So we were like, you know, if you give us a chance and if you give us the opportunity to be at that point, we will be there. And the hardest part for me throughout all of this, I mean, there's so many hurdles within this, but what I found was I was on the national team with, there's women's kayak that was in the Olympics, but not women's canoeing. So I was on the national team with the women's kayak, the men's kayak, the men's canoe that's in the Olympics, and the men's canoe too. And so what the International Olympic Committee and the International Canoe Federation, they have mandates. So the IOC is basically like, we only have a certain amount of medals for different sports. That's their mandate. And so the ICF
mold some more medals and make those available.
I have no idea what that end of it, but you know, that was their criteria. And then the International Canoe Federation, their criteria, they were saying, well, if we put women's canoe in the Olympics, then we have to take men's C2 out. So at this point, there was men's kayak, men's C2, and men's C1 in the Olympics, and only women's kayak in the Olympics. There's 3 categories available for men and 1 for women. So they were saying to us that they had to take men's C2 out to add women's canoe. And we're like, yeah, damn right you will, because it makes us a little more gender equal.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, but then we're taking away this Olympic dream of these men's C2 athletes that have been working for years and years. And so that's where they were like, and then there was this whole movement of safety too. And I mean, my coach here in Canada, who's one of the national team coaches, he went to the Olympics for C2 and won an Olympic medal in Sydney. And I don't disrespect C2. I love it. I love men and women equally, but it's about creating equal opportunity.
That's right.
Absolutely. And that it's not about holding back anything or putting anyone against each other. It's just about creating a conversation so that we can both succeed fairly.
I love that so much. And you talked about your dad being your confidant. Did she help you in, pushing through those barriers? Did she help guide you in any sort of advice and guide your teammates? Or, what was some of the things that your dad was sharing to kind of help you, push forward?
I mean, like, I literally think my dad is like my dad, my manager, my PR person, my editor. Like, there's so many different hats that they put on. But when we were going through this, it was both my mom and dad sitting down with me and helping me formulate statements that I could put out, because I was this young girl just wanting to paddle, and then we were starting to get put in front of cameras, a lot of different media, and I didn't want to say the wrong thing, but I was fired up. So I had to formulate the correct sentences and politically correct way of conveying our message that we are angry and that we want to be a part of the Olympic program, but not essentially angering the people that are supporting me already, like my federations and things like that. Yeah. That has supported us from the beginning. They have been amazing. So that has been good.
Yeah. Just trying to raise up who has actually been helping you, but also still letting people know we're not done and we want more to be done for us. So you talked about how you pushed with letters. You guys even had a class action lawsuit. You were not funded for 10 years, and you're still doing a lot of self-funding. Nuun's ambassadorship program has helped you with some of your funding. Talk about breaking down barriers and what that means to you.
Whew, yeah, I mean, as I said, as a young girl, I never had the dream to go to the Olympics, but I think now if I were to talk to Haley at 12 years old or 11 years old, I would be so proud and look up to who I am now. And I think that breaking down barriers, it's no longer okay, I want to make gender equality thing. This needs to happen now. Like, we need to include people as people, plain and simple. And I think that if we can continue to have uncomfortable conversations about what it is to be equal and question what it means to question everything is really what I start to come to. But why is it that you're saying that? Why is it that we're creating this platform this way? And I think that there's two sides to the coin, because advocacy and being at the forefront of gender equality in my case and helping create these equal opportunities, it's both rewarding and exhausting. You're just trying, in my specific case, I'm just trying to be a high performance athlete, which is in a day, 6 hours of your day. It's not 6 hours a day working out, but it's 6 hours of your day that you are doing nutrition and sports psych and recovery, and then your actual training, and then video review and everything like that. And that's 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. every day. And then you have your rest days, but that's enough in itself. And then you add another layer of fundraising, and then you add another layer of trying to get your sport in the Olympics. And it chips off on you. And although you are creating this pathway for future generations, it's taking a little bit of yourself. So yeah. I think that I'm extremely proud to create, this is really interesting to me, and I'll share a story here. But last year, while we were in Tokyo, I was on the conveyor belt. So when you're kayaking in our artificial courses, or canoeing in artificial courses, we'll go down the river, and then we'll have basically a conveyor belt that you sit on in your boat, and it takes you back up to the top. It's pretty awesome. So I was sitting on the conveyor belt with my competitions. There's one spot per category per country, and right now I'm fighting for a spot with another gal in Canada to go to the Olympics. And she had said to me, it's really interesting because I don't notice any inequalities within our national team, and I feel like I've been treated equal, and I don't think that I have to fight for anything. And I was like, that is awesome. And that is exactly, we've achieved our goal, because yes, I had to fight for it. And the group of women, we had to fight for this gender equality to get it in the Olympics. And it has been a huge thing for all of us, but the generations after us, they don't have to fight. They can just focus on being athletes, and they'll figure out another cause that they can be a part of and leave that legacy. But that for me was a huge win. And although she's my competition and we're trying to get an Olympic spot together, at the same time, I'm so happy that she didn't have to feel that inequality.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that is so amazing. I thank you for sharing that story. And that's exactly what it's about. The future generations, we blaze these paths for them. And, there have been people who have blazed paths for us. So thank you so much for your work there. Now, Tokyo 2020 has now been postponed to Tokyo 2021. What are some of those feelings that you're feeling? You talked about the mental toll of just really fighting through all of this and finally getting the thumbs up. You guys are going to be in the Olympics. And now it's like, actually, we're going to postpone this to 2021. I want to know, go through all the feelings, from then to now, and then just kind of how you're keeping that fire in your belly going into 2021.
Well, the initial blow was definitely intense. I had just gotten back from an Olympic qualifier in Australia, and ended up winning that one, and was scheduled to fly to our final Olympic qualifier in Brazil. And then we were grounded. So it's definitely been a journey. And but the thing is I think the cool thing is that the entire world has had some sort of setback this year. So it's not just us missing the Olympics. Everyone has something that's been taken from them. So I think, I've been waiting 11 years for this. So one more year in the grand scheme of things is nothing. But it is another year, and it's a weird year. The thing that sport has taught me, and specifically going through all of these huge hurdles within our sport, is that you're going to fail forward. And although this pandemic is not a personal failure, I have not done something to personally affect it. It has been basically a roadblock that I have to look at. How can I get through this? And for me, I think that there's been a lot of silver linings, but the thing that's been awesome, this is totally unrelated to sport, but I haven't been in Canada for a summer in 15 years. So I actually was able to experience the mountains here, and spend some time with friends, and grow a garden, and reinvigorate our community. And I think that is so important, and something I've lost over the last couple of years of traveling so much. So that's a gem that I'm going to take with me now when we start traveling. And when I have the harder days on the water, I can really remember that I was able to slow down a little bit and remember what it's like to well, that we have this amazing job as an athlete, but also what it's like to just be present instead of constantly thinking about what's next.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so hard. It's so hard to not know. And if no other time is showing us how anxious people get during uncertain times, this is the time to kind of really dig into that. 2020 has been so much for a lot of people, and there's been a lot of transformation and changes. What other changes and transformative things have been happening in your life aside from sport?
Yeah, 2020 has been insane. It's been the year I've been waiting for 11 years, and also now the year that we're all like, why 2020? But something that we've been really excited to share is that my dad is a transgender female. So we call her, or she is the preferred pronouns, and you can also use they, but she prefers her as she. And that's been something that has been eating away at her for her entire life, where she has always felt that she has wanted to be a female, but was born a man. And so, it's pretty crazy when I think about my journey, because I, as a young female, have been fighting for gender equality, and my dad has been behind me 100%. And secretly, not until we've recently been able to talk about it, she's also wanted to be a female, so she's also fighting not only for gender equality, but fighting for someone that she wants to be. So we have embraced it as a family, and her new name is Kimberly Daniels, and we came out to the world about it recently. And if there's naysayers, there's naysayers, but she's a judge, and she was a judge in Rio, and now she's going to be a judge in Tokyo for our sport. She'll be the first transgender female to ever be a judge in canoe slalom, and one of the few judges in the Olympics, to be honest. So I'm hoping that I can be an Olympic athlete in Tokyo and be the first fleet of women's canoeists to ever be in the Olympics. And I'm hoping that my dad, as Kim, will be the first ever transgender female in the Olympics for canoe slalom. So I'm really hoping we can pave that path together. But, anything can happen, and we just have to keep our head down and continue to work towards that.
That is so incredible. You guys truly are, have the genetic code of breaking barriers within your family's DNA. And I appreciate you so much for sharing that with us and with the Nuuness community. So we can, better support you and support your dad, Kimberly Daniels, as a judge in the Olympics. So you guys are going to be a breaking barrier Olympic team, the Daniels. So we appreciate you that so much. I appreciate your perspective on everything that you shared with us. Thank you so much for fighting for equity, equality within sport. We have so far to go still, yet you've created such an incredible space that you've filled. While there's many more, hopefully, that legacy that you've left will allow for future generations to continue to chip away at other spaces of inequity that they see. And so I really appreciate you for that. And I know your community appreciates you. We appreciate you within the sport community. Thank you so much for being a role model for women in sport. And I want you to know that your story really inspires me, and I'm very thankful for it. And, who knows, maybe my daughter will want to be a canoeist, and now there's a path that's been blazed because of you. So I really appreciate that. And I thank you so much for joining us virtually. Such an interesting time, but, thankful for technology and the ability for us to be able to connect. Just some major things that I just thought about. I love the fact that you said, we fail forward, which allows us an opportunity to continue to think about progressing. And sometimes there's going to be roadblocks, as you mentioned as well. And it's just your job, our job, to kind of navigate what other path are we going to take to still get to the same destination. So those are major takeaways that I have from an enlightenment that I have from you, Haley. And, just, again, you giving back to your community in the way that you have, and to women in the way that you have, is a legacy that you're going to leave. And, it's going to help so many people. So we really appreciate you at Nuness, and thank you so much for breaking down barriers, keeping the hope alive as you fight towards, really making your mark in Tokyo 2021.
Yeah, well, thank you. And working with Noon has been honestly a dream. The team and it's nice to meet you today, but following your Olympic journey and everything you've done as well as a mother and, as a Black athlete, like there's so many different things that we have to talk about, and it's so important. So thank you. Awesome.
Bye, Haley.